Thank you, Chair. Let me say it's a privilege to speak with Vaidamurthy. I've known him before he became a lawyer, in fact, or while he was becoming a lawyer and studying as a law student in London, and we worked together when we were a small-based organization in West London, in Southall, on a number of projects. And for years, he'd been forcing the plight of Indian Tamils and other minorities on us to take action. And although we did not ignore him, we didn't take the situation as seriously as we should have. And in 2007, after it returned to Malaysia for some time, we made contact again because the organization that he established, HINDRAF, with other individuals in Malaysia, had galvanized mass support amongst the Indian community and organized what must be seen as one of the largest mobilization by the Indian community outside India itself, demanding rights for minorities. And even then, having been involved in a number of racist murders and genocide cases across the globe, I falsely imagined Malaysia as a country of holiday destinations. Stereotype image of Malaysia itself. And in August last year, after discussions with Vaidamurthy and other people in this country, we embarked on a trip to Malaysia, which I have to say, having been involved in visits to apartheid South Africa and worked with Navajo Indians in the Northern American states, it was a truly eye-opening experience. And I want to graphically describe the findings of our visit on mid-August last year. In fact, I think it was the 12th of August when a very eminent human rights lawyer and a friend of mine called Imran Khan, who's a Lawrence for the Stephen Lawrence family, took the flight from London Heathrow Airport to Kuala Lumpur. And we went with some trepidation. We thought the Malaysian government would stop me coming because although I have done law, I'm not a legal practicing solicitor. And I thought that a government that wants to stifle opposition would find it easier to stop me than an eminent human rights lawyer. Well, as we reached Kuala Lumpur and filed on the desk to get entry into Kuala Lumpur, unbelievably, my colleague Imran Khan was stopped from entering the UK, from entering Malaysia. For hours, they did not explain why they wanted to deport him. And we made very strong representations, not just to the Malaysian government, who refused to answer any of our calls, but to the intelligence services based at the airport itself, and to the immigration officers at the Kuala Lumpur airport, and galvanized support from members of cabinet in this country on telephone to ensure that Imran Khan would be allowed in. A number of House of Lords and ladies spoke directly or attempted to speak directly to the Home Ministry, but their calls and representations went unheeded. On Saturday, 15th of August, Imran was deported back. And it's only when he was on flight, he was told that he'd been deported because he was a threat to national security. Now that is an absolutely irrational decision, because although they deported Imran Khan, they allowed me in. And I and both Imran and I actually went for the same purpose. Our purpose was very simple. We were trying to gather and galvanize evidence for a suit that Vaidhamoti had initiated at the High Court in London in 2007, which is based on the premise that the British government had failed in its obligation to guarantee rights for minority Indians and other minorities, despite the recommendations of the Reid Commission prior to Malaysian independence in 1957. And this suit and this class action in London, unprecedented as it is, argued to readdress the victimization of that Indian community. And not interested in the monetary gain, but it was a suit specifically lodged to expose what can only be deemed as institutional murder and discrimination of minority Indians in Malaysia. And I choose my words wisely. I was on a trip to Malaysia for about a week, no more than that, from the 12th to the 18th, or 16th, 12th to the 18th of August. I think I visited in that period 3 schools, 4 temples, 4 plantation estates, settlements, I think numbering 2. Saw over 20 clients, met some eminent lawyers, I think 2 meetings with lawyers in Malaysia, and addressed, I think, 3 public meetings, one in Kalang, which was attended by more than 2,000 people, another on an estate near Penang, attended by over 400 people, and another one on a plantation estate, vivid in my memory, attended by about 200 indentured laborers. And what I witnessed, and I said, compared to my visits to the most destitute sites in South Africa and Northern America, does not compare. I met clients who were living in the most impoverished conditions simply because they had been plantation workers and had lost work, on housing estates where they had no medical care. I met a woman who was half paralyzed with sickness, and she had nobody to feed. She couldn't feed anyone, and her family could not feed her. And she'd been in that condition for over 3 years. I met two families who had suffered the most brutal assault on them. Scars with daggers still visible on their faces and bodies. They had been victims a decade ago of a murderous hate attack against Tamils organized by Malays, where I think 10 families had been killed and over 50 severely injured. Yet nobody had been caught or persecuted. And they lived that life even after 10 years of that experience. I met 2 young, destitute brothers who were deprived of their nationality because they were orphans and their parents did not have, before they died, the nationality that they so yearned for. I met families, I think one family with 45 individuals in it, who had been forcibly converted to Islam, but still practiced Islam, still practiced Hinduism. And they were deprived of work. They lived together in the same estate, in impoverished conditions. The father was 70-year-old, and the mother was around 68. I met a woman called Nisha with one of her sons, a Muslim woman who had married a Hindu, fleeing from the police in a refuge created by neighbors and friends because a child was going to be taken away because she did not want her husband to convert. Worse still, I visited temples, some of which had been there for 200 years, and they were about to be demolished. Temples next to sewage sites where you can smell the sewage as you enter the temple. Temple workers and residents had occupied these temples to save them because they'd been pride and family-oriented institutions gathering support and building that community. Despite legal actions, they were in perilous conditions and they couldn't save these institutions. Now, every human being, regardless of where they live, believe that they deserve the right to live in dignity. And there are perhaps 3 or 4 important things in a human person's life. The birth, the quality of life while you exist, and then your death. And even if we are not treated equally whilst we are alive, I know from the racial murders that I deal with in this country, death makes us equal, because we can give someone a dignified burial or a cremation, despite the circumstances of that death. I visited burial grounds in Malaysia, not just near Kuala Lumpur, but Penang, but throughout. I think 3 burial sites. One next to a national sports stadium, if I believe I'm correct. Unmarked, waterlogged, where you had to use de facto planks to cross one area from the other. Uncatered for. Some of the graves had broken down. Families found it impossible to visit these graves because of the way they were situated off the main road and highway. And you could see when you stood next to the grave that these people hadn't even been granted their dignity whilst in death. So not only were you not afforded dignity and respect while you were alive, you didn't even believe or were treated as equal when you died. There are horror stories upon horror stories. And yes, some people will say it's a fleeting visit, and I was only shown what HINDRAF wanted me to see. Yes, it's true, I didn't visit the beaches, which I'd yearned for 10 years ago because some of my best friends come from Malaysia who actually come from Penang, and they've been cajoling me to visit Penang to their houses for a long time. I didn't see any of the beaches. I saw poverty, destitution, homelessness, lack of dignity, destruction of temples, people lost because nobody treated them with respect. I also saw another side. It's absolutely wrong to demonize HINDRAF as a Hindu fundamentalist organization. And I should know, I've fought against fundamentalism and racism for the last 30 years. I've had death threats from the British National Party, the Hindu right, the Muslim right, and the Christian right throughout my life. But the other side I saw was the immense pride, organization and mobilization, the tenacity of HINDRAF volunteers, not only in the way they organized this trip despite security harassment, but in the way they displayed their grace and respect and dignity whilst at public meetings. Threats overhanging for them to be arrested because of the actions they were taking in fighting for equality and justice. it reminded me of